pleased to be here tonight. I've been reading Bob's work for a long time, and it was really, I think, a great event when a lot of this work was finally collected in this book we've been talking about already, Masterpiece Comics, that was published last year. We have some copies here that you can look at or buy if you want to. But I think many of you here in the audience are probably familiar with Bob's work. But for those of you who aren't, I just wanted to sort of give the brief capsule summary. Bob, as we'll see today, has done a wide variety of work, illustration, comics, but the real core of what he does, I think probably put in the simplest terms, is that he adapts canonical Western literature using the sort of stylistic surfaces, characters, and formats of historical American comic books and comic strips.
I feel like I should say, yes, yes, Senator, that is correct.
Yes. And so just to give a few brief examples, the exhibit that I was very pleased to curate that's here specifically focuses on one story called Dostoevsky Comics, in which Bob has adapted Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment in the style of a 1950s Batman comic book. And as you can see, anyone who's familiar with that work, it's a very accurate forgery featuring very atypical content for that type of comic book. And similarly, as you look through Bob's work, you see the same sort of amazing trick being pulled over and over. So the other stories that he's done have included adaptations of The Scarlet Letter in the form of a Little Lulu comic book, obviously a children's comic book normally, but here dealing with themes of adultery and Puritanism, or The Crypt of Bronte, which is Wuthering Heights in the style of an EC horror comic, or something a little closer to our own time period, Waiting to Go, which is an adaptation of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, featuring those two lovable stamps, Beavis and Butthead. And as you can see, this is all very meticulously crafted work. He very conscientiously evokes the styles that he's drawing from, and nothing is left to chance. Even this cover for this book, Bob had sort of mentioned to me offhand when he was putting the book together that it was actually based on some other comic books. Obviously what we're seeing here are Shakespeare and Dante and Oscar Wilde in this sort of super heroic pose. And the other day Bob sent me these JPEGs. An issue of Action Comics, All Winners Comics, and Adventure Comics. Bob, can you tell us what you took individually from each of these three covers?
Well, sure. It should be sort of clear. I'll go back just so you can see again. The figures are taken, the poses are swiped. That's the comic book term for stealing. Swiped. It's more friendly. The figure, the poses are swiped from Action Comics. The whole idea of them bursting through the page is taken from All Winners in the middle. Lots of comics in the 40s had this trope of the characters coming at you through the front cover. And then the logo is directly based on Adventure Comics. So there you have that.
And just briefly, when you were sort of conceptualizing the cover, like what were the kind of ideas that were leading you ultimately to these three pieces of source material?
Well, I was totally at a loss for a cover. And now that you've seen 4 pages of my work, you see how much I rely on the characters and fame of other cartoonists. So there's a long tradition of doing parody, and as you'll see, Bill's going to show you some stuff, and I'm going to show you some stuff that was inspirational to me in this vein. For the cover, I didn't want to just parody one of the styles I did inside. It really didn't show the breadth and the scope of what I was after, and also I didn't want, I don't know, DC Comics to be upset that I put Batman on the cover of my book. So I was trying to find some visual clue to let people know what I was getting at. And actually, authors as superheroes is not entirely unknown, I think, in the history of comics. But in any case, it struck me that the best characters to use for my cover would be the authors, who are faithfully represented in my odd stories. So once I just had the notion of making them superheroes, it kind of came together very easily. Most of the work that I parody is from the 40s and 50s and 60s of comic books and comic strips. So I was naturally drawn toward that era. Although those of you who are familiar with comic books of today and know things that kind of sprung out of Image Comics and these other highly testosterone-driven superhero comics with these characters with muscles on their muscles on their muscles. I would love to do like sort of a freakish cover like that, but I think it would repel half of the readers I was trying to attract. So I went for the classics and went